When she asked me to speak about stewardship, Carrie Virgilio requested a hat, and I promised her a big one. So here you are. The theme of this year's stewardship campaign is hidden treasures, and I've been thinking about what are the greatest treasures of our church and the most hidden, and I've come to the conclusion that one of the greatest hidden treasures of our church is memory. And we have layer upon layer of treasured memories in our church. First, there's this little baby, which represents the memories of people who lived thousands of years ago, who shared their stories and their wisdom to be an inspiration down the ages. And the Bible is loaded with references to remembering. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And then, of course, there's Jesus' instruction to do this in remembrance of me. Moving forward a few centuries, the congregations that have made this church over history have hundreds of years of memory. When Reverend Rusty Eidman Hicks retired a few years ago, we decided to have memorial plaques made with a list of our pastors. So I rooted around a bit on my research friend Google, and I consulted a book of the church's history that Joyce Lee lent to me, and I established what I'm fairly sure is an accurate listing of 300 years of pastors. And there were two churches originally, the one we have now, the Baptist Church, and the Reformed Church across Main Street that's now a Weichert Realty. And when neither congregation could support a minister, they joined forces. And for a while they would worship 6 months in one building, and then they would all get together and lug the pipe organ and all the furnishings across to the other building for the next 6 months. We still have people in our congregation who remember that. I wasn't there, but I remember that. Sometimes we need to help each other remember. The stones in our graveyard help us to remember our beloved friends and relatives, and the old congregants who've been resting there for tens or hundreds of years. Those stained glass windows in our sanctuary help us to remember. They have those panels in the bottom, in memoriam, and some of them memorialize someone who is important to the congregation, and a wife. Sometimes you have to dig a little for hidden treasures, you know. Karen Swift did a little digging and identified all of the "and wives" in our windows, and if you look closely, you'll find little brass plaques under each of the "and wife" windows, so that we can remember a little more truly, a little more completely. And our congregation has memories like the story of Ann Taylor, who has her own window panel in our church. This is how I heard it from Janice Liebenau. Ann Taylor was a Sunday school teacher in the Baptist church in the early 19th century. And at that time, Holmdel was a farming community, and both white families and free African American families came to the church, and their children all went to Ann Taylor's Sunday school, mainly because it provided a unique opportunity for children to learn to read and write. But Mrs. Taylor noticed a drop-off in attendance on the part of African American children. And when she found that it was because they were embarrassed to come to Sunday school barefoot, Ann Taylor decreed that children were no longer allowed to wear shoes to her Sunday school, whereupon all the children returned. And our church property is chock full of memory. I was standing in the sanctuary the other day with Lynn when we were recording for the virtual choir, and Lynn pointed out into the pews where Ed and Doris and Irene Schumacher used to sit, and her parents. Other people sit there now too, but those memories are still there. And all of us have memories of our own experiences with the church. I remember when the choir was singing a piece that has the line, "Create in me a clean heart, O God," and our music director at the time liked us to really hit those consonants, and Bob Liebenau had a glass of water, and every time we hit those crispy consonants, he flicked water on the back of Sharon Wessel's neck, and she thought he was spitting on her. And I remember when our kids were little, and William and I were both singing in the choir, and our choir orphan kids used to sit with the Schumachers, and Victoria would hum the tune, and Ed would read the words, and between them they managed the hymns. I remember in 2008 when our daughter Elizabeth signed on to be a speaker, during our open and affirming discernment process, and she said, "People say that coming out of the closet is like throwing up. You dread it, you put it off as long as possible, but then when it becomes inevitable, afterward you feel so much better. Well, I have to puke." And she came out to the congregation from the pulpit, and there was a standing ovation. These, then, are some of the hidden treasures I have found in our church. The treasured memories of our own lives, the hundreds of years of memories of our congregation, and the formidable set of memories that make our faith tradition. And treasures are precious, and they don't come cheap. To keep bringing the message of our faith and teaching those treasured traditions to our young people, we need our church and we need our Christian education program. To preserve the physical memories of our lovely sanctuary, we need to maintain our property. And to build deep and lasting memories of our own, memories of the love and fellowship of this congregation, we need to invest in our congregational vitality and to support our ministry team. That is why William and I support the church and why I am encouraging you to pledge generously.